What's going on, fam? Happy Monday to you. I hope you are off to a good start this morning. I've got a treat for you today. Interviewed Roy Mitchell Cardenas. He is from the band Mutemath, and he also is an ambient recording artist under the name Ambient. So we talked about the ambient genre. We talked a little bit about Drishti Records. Drishti Records is exclusively like an instrumental new age ambient record label. We're doing some lo-fi music. It's this label that I'm managing now that I spoke about from the beginning of this whole series, because I'm going to be probably bringing in a few more of those guys, or at least interviewing them on Zoom and whatnot. So be on the lookout for that. But Roy and I basically spoke about genres, how much they suck, opportunities that we see in the music industry, how the music industry, the industry itself impacts the art, collaboration, getting together with other artists, how important that is, his history, New Orleans, jazz, what's really cool about ambient music, which is the experimentation that kind of goes into it, the landscape painting that it is. You know, you can really sort of get experimental and impressionistic in terms of, if I'm using painting terms, in terms of how you can, you know, push this paint around on the canvas. It really, to me, it does feel like more of a traditional composition than some of the other music that I get to do. So it's fun. I like it. I quite enjoy it. And I think he does too. And I think that you will like this interview. In terms of what's happening over here this week, I don't even know anymore. Just got back from Mexico. That was a fun trip with the kids. I'm not going to dig too deep into those details, but it was a lot of fun and I'm glad to be back. But yeah, without further ado, enjoy today's episode with Roy. He's a great dude. I think you'll like him. Yeah, thanks again for stopping in.
Yeah, no. They're not far at all for me.
No, right. 10 you're 10 minutes. Was that all it was?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good. Let's introduce you a little bit to people, your history and what you're doing these days.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Roy Mitchell Cardenas. I probably am most known for my work with Mutemath. Mm-hmm. I was in a rock band called Mutemath for many years. Played bass, played guitar in that band. And about 2017, I left it and started doing freelance work. Mostly I left because I wanted to be home with my family.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah.
I have 3 kids, and the road can be very taxing, especially after, 20 plus years of being on the road.
Yeah.
It's great, but after a while, it's difficult to balance. So long story short, I moved to Nashville, back to Nashville actually in 2016 from Miami, and started just doing more of the things that I was actually already doing on the side with Mutemath, which was production, session work, remote session work. I would do private teaching as well, and in the course of my post Mutemath life, let's say, the opportunity came to make ambient music with Drishti through a friend of mine. And Luke gave me this lane to say, hey, this is an opportunity. Send us some things and see if it goes well. And so for me, it was an easy bridge to cross or to create in a way, because Mutemath has a lot of elements of ambient music. Sure. We always kind of, it's not the prominent feature, but there's a lot of synths. There was like these textures and stuff that we would use in the music, especially live during transitions, and so I just thought, okay, I'm going to take some of those elements that I know how to create, and then try to make it my own. Obviously Brian Eno, and from Brian Eno to like some of the Radiohead stuff that is very ambient I knew kind of the field or the landscape, so to speak, and then the Mutemath experience I had, but I wanted to make it my own. So over the course of, I'm on record 6 essentially already. Right. It's just been a process of finding what that is for me with the project that's called Ambient Soul.
Yeah.
Soul, S-O-L, S-O-L, Sol in Espanol, so that's sun.
Yeah, no, I love, so obviously we got introduced to each other through Drishti as a Drishti artist, and now managing the label myself. But your brand at the label, your artist at the label is, I mean, personally, everybody's got a really unique take on it, and I love the whole Brian Eno history with ambient music as well. The like, what is it? The music for airports, 80s, and even some back into the 70s. He was doing some interesting stuff with it, and I kind of dove into that history just recently because I'm doing some research, looking at some of this lo-fi stuff that we've been talking about doing, to try to figure out what different directions you can take it. Because there's only when I started, which is, it sounds like a little bit before you started in it. It was focused almost completely on just making covers of songs and putting them into the ambient space. Because at that time there was only one, so recently there's only one spa channel on Sirius that they were going to target. And it ended up kind of taking over with Pandora. But Sirius has opened up into like 7 different channels. We've talked about a lot of, and now there's this whole like lo-fi beat movement. And binaural beats. Have you gotten into binaural beats yet?
I've experimented with that a bit too. Interesting stuff.
Yeah. And adding, and I mean, talking about remixes, actually doing some of those binaural beats, maybe infusing some of that. I infused it into one of the records that I put out in this last round, just to see if that would help. Talking about some of those things that'll kind of help propagate the traffic of those records and see if it can get into some different spaces. But yeah, there's just a lot of different ways that you can kind of bridge into it. But thinking about your Mutemath experience, I was finding a bunch of videos of you being interviewed about the different sounds that you would create, especially live, it seemed like. So yeah, you definitely were experimenting with a lot of different ways to sort of create transitions between things or whatever, or talk a little bit more about your role in creating some of that.
I think I've always been into sampling. That was probably the genesis of it all. We talked about some of these lo-fi beat makers and hip hop makers, beat makers, using records, old records to create sounds. That was kind of the beginning of what I would do, influenced by people like DJ Shadow and I don't know, just a lot of those kind of that vein of hip hop and that sampling world. So it started there. So Mutemath, we all were huge fans of DJ Shadow, and used a lot of those techniques to create demos. And so what ended up happening, so we'd present songs, I used to use MPC 2000, we had the ASR 10, and on those machines, it's very easy to take a 5-second sample of an orchestra or a synth and slow it down and put an effect on it. And all of a sudden you have all this texture and this rich goodness, right? So we would use that and then write a lot of times over those kind of bases.
Oh, interesting.
So we had, Darren, who's a drummer, is an incredible beat maker as well. Paul, the singer, same thing. So all of us were kind of in that vein, and then on top of that, I love guitar pedals and creating sounds with delays, and there's so many cool delay pedals now that that I've got my hands on, that I feel like it's just you put it in and it's like you're more playing the pedal board than the actual guitar sometimes, or the bass, and I would do it with guitar and bass. And that became a thing also for Mutemath. We had this thing where our original guitar player, Greg Hill, would pick up his pedal board and he'd create kind of just a infinite loop on the D7, the Ibanez D7 delay. And when you have that infinite loop going and you change the time, it's like he could create a melody with it. So he was going, it's like he'd go that, he'd go, and he would create all these different textures and sounds. And so for me, that thing was just something always present with the band, and it's something that was always exciting with the band, especially live, where we could stretch out. We had this kind of element of improvisation as well, where Darren would go up and bang on something that was not supposed to be banged on necessarily, put a mic to it, put a delay on it, create some vibe with the pedals, and all of a sudden we have this new piece of music that comes to life. So I feel like with the ambient stuff, and I know some people don't like that label. I don't know what else to call it. I feel like there's so many different labels with it, right? But
I was about to say that there's a lot of different things you can kind of call it.
Yeah,
you know,
soundscape, ambient. Some of it dips into this neoclassical movement.
Exactly.
It's soundtrack, it's cinematic, whatever you want to call it. But you know what I mean. It's not a traditional song form. But that was the thing I was trying to, and have been trying to explore in ambient soul, is like, can I get hooks? Can I get something that
real melodies
that is like a melody or a rhythmic thing or some kind of repetitive cadence, or I don't know, something that like subliminally the listener is latching onto. You know. Anyway, but so Mutemath, like I said, was good groundwork for me just to kind of continue doing more of this ambient music.
I come from a like as a lyrical songwriter. In my background is like pretty heavily Southern soul, blues, jazz, that kind of thing. And so organic instrumentation, like I hardly use pedals whenever I have played, especially live. I just like a boost or something. I'll just use like a Fishman EQ with a boost on it, and that's my overdrive. You know, just a little bit louder. And I'm often also just doing acoustic. But to your point, I love the experimentation, especially when people are using pedals, not just to like push the sound of that instrument into something, but using the pedal as an instrument. I just interviewed a buddy of mine, Darren Johnson. He's an amazing pianist. I'll send you some of his stuff if you're unfamiliar. But he played with Miles Davis. He was MD. He was the MD for Seal during the Like a Rose tour, Alanis Morissette during Jagged Little Pill. So been around forever. You know.
We toured with Alanis.
Oh yeah.
We did one tour, but he wasn't on the tour though.
A little bit later. Yeah, because this was like early 90s is when Jagged Little Pill came out. But when I met him, it was at these jazz nights. Kamasi Washington was playing with him, if you know Kamasi. That's how I got introduced to him, was just, you know, rubbing elbows in this little bar trying to figure out where we could play, because we're a young band in LA and didn't have a home yet. But we get introduced to him. The thing I loved about him right away, he was using one of those Line 6 delay pedals with his piano, with like a live, just a big baby. It might have been a baby grand, because this is a tiny room. But he's got it. He's got the piano looped through this thing, and then he's got. I think he had a Rhodes or a Whirly at some point too. But he would do these Radiohead covers with a jazz band, and they're going just fucking nuts. And he would use that delay pedal and really push. Talk about creating a melody. He would push these melodies from these Radiohead songs and whatever else he was playing. It wasn't just that, but that's the one I remember. We ended up doing like a Jeff Buckley cover. We did Hallelujah probably a couple of times, you know, but he was always just sort of like also dynamics that you can create with those kinds of with the use and experimentation of pedals and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. But again,
who was part of his band, if you don't mind asking?
Gary Novak on drums. Kamasi was on saxophone. It would change a lot. He had the bass player from Leno's live band on the TV show, and I can't remember that dude's name, but a time or two that I played with him.
I probably met him when we played
Darren?
Leno. Yeah, no.
Or the bass player.
We played the bass player,
That was
I didn't know his name either, though. But
yeah, big dude with, I think he had some dreads at the time, maybe. And I think he was playing upright. And he just happened to be in town the couple of gigs that I played. I remember him on one or two of them. But like Gary Novak was Chick Corea's drummer for a long time.
Legendary guy. I know who he is.
So he and Darren were on tour with Miles Davis together on those last tours.
Wow,
last tour.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but talk about. I mean, the other side of ambient music. Thinking about that. So we were talking about this new Grammy category of jazz adjacent.
I've not heard of it.
I guess it just showed up in the last year or two.
Okay.
But I think a lot about like your stuff, and then there's another artist, Sleep Space, That producer's really great. He does Dolby Atmos. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to make some connections between all of the artists on the label. I mean, just as an artist myself, the way that I've always run my business is more of a collective. But I would like to make some introductions to see if there's some collaborative energy that can happen.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool. Everybody's got a good energy, and it's fun.
That is a little bit of the strange aspect of this, is that like a lot of people don't know that I am ambient soul in a lot of ways, and I don't know hardly anyone from the label. I know like maybe two people. You know, I just met you recently. Yeah. You know, it's such a but it's how the music industry is kind of going now in a lot of ways. Like playing live is just not that. Like I remember with Mutemath, there was like kind of a scene we were a part of, you know, or even before that when I played in like punk bands and hardcore bands in my hometown, like there was a scene. Yeah. You know, or you kind of knew things and knew people and there was collaboration. Right. But everyone is so connected in a way, but disconnected. Right? Like 100%. So in their own little bubbles, we're all creating these little things and then throwing them out to the ocean and hoping like for the best.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So I love that idea because I believe that music should be collaborative, and I think that we need to feed off each other more. We're losing, and you know, with the advent and not the advent, the presence now of AI taking over music is just like, and maybe where that's going, it's just, you know, where are we all headed? You know, it's just scary.
True. Yes, I just created a t-shirt brand for my merch. It's like the only merch I'm selling right now, and I don't play live shows, so merch doesn't do well. Yeah. But I was like, I'm actually, you know, I'm trying to promote it in some way or another, but it's listen to music, not AI.
Yeah. So you made me think of that when I saw your cap there.
Hat. Yeah. I'll give you a hat on the way out.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's, you know, as soon as AI became a thing and like SAG went on strike, I was the first thought I had was musicians will never do that. Like I feel like we could and we would in the right setting, in the right groups. You know, but it's everybody is so sort of niched into their own. The music industry is also, I think it's sort of set up like pretty much every way that the music industry is set up works against the artist in a lot of ways.
Sure.
You know,
from day one,
like I'm just, you know, from day one. If you actually track the history of publishing, like it was just exploitation is all it was, you know. But anyway, let's not go down that road. The
community.
To your point, building a better community around it. Yeah, I'm all about, and that's why, you know, like when I the whole reason I decided to take over the label management side of things is because they weren't going to continue it. I was having a lot of fun with the projects, but once we started talking about it, and I realized the artists like yourself that are on the label, I was like, these are guys I want to work with. Like maybe I can figure out a way to make this a little bit more collaborative. Yeah. Because I'm always trying to find ways too to keep myself interested. Yeah. We were talking about this before, like we're both dads, like I don't want to go on tour necessarily right now. If the right thing came along, I'd go, you know. It'd probably be more of a vacation than taking my kids on vacation. Because that's a lot of work. Yep. No shame to my kids. Like I love going on vacation with them, obviously. But again, you know, from a work perspective, I've gotten a lot more into just trying to get into TV and film and sync and in the publishing world and building up my business in different ways in that arena. Yeah. And I think it's important to, again, I just think it's important to find any way to like stay excited about the craft of music and production is fine. But yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
We
need to keep searching for the spark of things.
Yeah, and that, and I think to your same point, a part of that is collaboration. Yeah, you know. Yeah, I agree. I'm doing a lot more co-writing these days than I've ever done. Yeah. Because I just, you know, I could have 100 song ideas in a couple weeks, but where the hell are all those songs going to go? Yeah. And it's nice to create sort of a deadline for yourself with somebody else of we're going to finish this thing and it's going to and then we'll figure out a way to put it somewhere. Yeah. You know. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox here. You got me excited. So we're doing the Ambient project. Are there any other personal projects that you have going on? You know, we were talking about YouTube and things that you're putting out there, lessons, you know.
Yeah, I started a kids YouTube channel called Electro Kids 4 years ago now, and have some material in there. Some of it has been released to Spotify, you know, and other platforms of sites, just the videos. But essentially, it was an educational channel for a language education for, you know, Spanish and English learning for young kids.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that. I've kind of not as active with that as much. I still use it. I'm a full-time teacher as well, so I use it sometimes in my classroom, which is nice. And then just working as a producer and a mixer on all kinds of other projects. But something that I would call my own necessarily right now, ambient soul really is kind of the focus. As far as it's all really I have time for. I have to kind of pick my battles as a full-time dad. And actually it's the one that I feel like I have the most freedom in, you know, and I ask myself in doing this, and I'm sure you've gone through the same thought process as we do this year after year and go through it. It's like one of the things to me that helps me find that spark and that inspiration is the things that kind of have the return of the most freedom. And what I mean by that is like, you know, freedom to be creative and not think about, you know, because sometimes when you're working with a band or you're producing a band or you're mixing something or we're talking about scoring a film, you're working for someone else. You're trying to make their vision, you're trying to have their vision come to life and really be the best that it can be. Whereas when it's your baby, your project, it's like, and you have that freedom to really, you know, explore and try things. And I think with the Ambient label, there's a lot, like we talked about, because I feel like it's growing in these different categories or whatever. You know, we're talking about the jazz adjacent, which is an interesting name. I can kind of see what they're talking about though, because I think right away it came to mind an artist. What's their name? Dami. He's an incredible drummer and piano player. What's their name? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
I just saw a video of them on a Japanese TV show. It was really good. Someone could, I don't know if where this can go, but they could drop it in the comments. But you know who I'm talking about. I think she's French. She has blonde hair. She's a piano player. And then there's this kid on drums that is just like, he's just ridiculous. Like very, it's, you know, it's kind of experimental, and I would put it probably in that category. In that jazz adjacent space, anyway, but, you know, I feel like having that kind of freedom to create is just something beautiful and something that I want to be a part of, you know, like, and that's definitely something that keeps me searching and keeps me like wanting to go back and do another record.
Good. I'm thinking about jazz adjacent. I half made the joke with Darren when he was telling me that. I was like, is that just Americana? What are we talking about? Because, you know, Americana is like everything now. What's interesting is I feel like it's just, I don't know if we were talking about this or I was talking to somebody about this, but like all of these new genres. Like thinking about ambient is a great example. Ambient is what? It was when I first started talking about doing it, they're like, the first thing that pops into people's head is elevator music. Like, is it that? And that's, you know, it's not really, because the spa channel is mostly used in like spas and salons. For sure. But that has become a real specific thing. If you start really diving into the 7 channels that are on Sirius now, they're all sort of sectioned off into these different things. I'm interested to see where lo-fi as a genre kind of goes, because I don't even know what you would put that in. I mean, for the label, it's all going to fit under New Age is the official category. Which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's actually new age is where we put it when it goes to the distributor, to the DSPs. That's how they see it.
Yeah.
But in talking to Pandora and Sirius, of course, they have their different, very specific curated channels.
Which in the Grammys, right? It's new age ambient chant. I want to say
100%. Yeah.
It's all, and it's like, so what is
that's pretty broad.
What is chant?
And where does world music fit in that?
Yeah, right. So I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I feel like it has to do probably with historical context of how things developed. But you're right. The ambient, it's like, well, it's kind of like spa music and what you hear in a yoga. I don't know what to call it, yoga studio or something. But then, like you said, it's not like, and I feel like that's, I don't know about you, but for me, I like parts of that, but I want to branch out as well, like where
100%.
there's other melodies, there's different instruments you don't normally hear.
Yeah.
There's just soundscape stuff that really is just, like where I think of more like, what Radiohead did or David Bowie, especially on like that Low album.
Right.
There's segments of that I love, or Sigur Rós, or like, I don't know. There's just,
for sure,
it starts to become bigger than these labels, I guess.
Well, no, and thinking about just the creation of the music too. There's a big use for a lot of organic sound in that, like nature sounds, rain, lightning. Anytime there's like activity going on in my backyard, I try to go out and pull a recorder out just because I'm kind of creating a bank of those sounds. Because it's fun to like write to raindrops. I don't know if you've tried doing that on any of your stuff, but like, well, you've been in sort of this experiment. I'm leaning into that now. Yeah. So like, I started listening to. Like I was referencing a lot of different. Anybody that was an experimental, Bowie, Peter Gabriel, I would put in that category a little bit, but definitely some Radiohead, Sigur Rós. I feel like I was listening to some Flaming Lips at some point, but anybody that's sort of been pulling from these different elements, and I've been kind of gearing into that space. But I actually started most of it like using mostly organic instrumentation, just super slow. Like one of the good examples from the first record I did with the label was a cover of "Sweet Child of Mine" and playing Slash's parts, his lead melodies on the bells in synth. Just like you hear it, and the guy, I had a buddy of mine mix the record. And Seth was like, "Oh, this is so great," and that's a long song anyway. So it ended up being like 13 minutes long, and now I kind of need to go back and revisit and maybe remix some of those tracks with some binaural beats attached to them. And then what's cool is actually just as a songwriter, I like slowing those things way down and kind of peeling them apart in different layers too, because you start to hear these patterns in the changes that create movements, kind of like a classical piece, or just thinking of jazz adjacent. I mean, some of this stuff kind of fits into a jazz world too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we definitely have to get. I want to introduce you to the guys at Sleep Space, talking about like Dolby Atmos and just any kind of mixing and mastering. The guys that are in Sleep Space, which is another artist on the label, Drew Kapner, he's got a great studio in LA, and he mixes and masters in all the ways that you'd want. And he's one of those guys that's 100% willing and wants to be more collaborative and know who the other artists on the label are. I want to know more about I'm just curious about people. Where is it that you, where did you come from? You said you played more in like punk and
so
bands.
I grew up in South Texas, right on the border.
That's
McAllen, Texas.
McAllen. Okay.
So the Rio Grande Valley, RGV.
Yeah.
So my mom is originally from northern Mexico. Okay. And then my dad's from Houston. They've settled right on the border in the middle, and that's pretty much sums up like my roots in a lot of ways. My dad's family is, it's Texas, but it's really New Orleans. Yeah. Like my grandfather's from New Orleans and grandmother, so that kind of influence of music, so jazz. I actually ended up moving to New Orleans.
Okay.
I went to Loyola University. That's where I met the guys from Mutemath.
Okay.
And then my mom's side, I spent a lot of my summers in Mexico and have the Latin roots of music as well, played in all that style as well.
Okay.
But the scene, like that was my parents' music, but the scene was punk and hardcore. So
sure, so that's what you put.
Yeah, so I played a lot of that.
Yeah.
Branched out, got into jazz, studied jazz at Loyola. Used to gig around there, and kind of all over the place. Latin jazz, punk, classic rock. Yeah. New Orleans music. So a little bit of everything.
New Orleans is another connection we have. When were you there? What were those years?
I was there in 95 to 2001.
Okay. Was there an Italian restaurant? It would have been in the French Quarter, kitty corner to the Omni Hotel on Royal in Orleans, maybe. Tortorici's? Did you remember it?
Yeah. I don't know it.
So, there's a plaque on the side of the building, Tortorici's restaurant. That was my family.
Oh.
So they came, actually this little banjo thing, it's a banjo mandolin, came from Sicily with my great grandfather. When he was 11, he came in through the New Orleans port and stayed there and built what became, that side of my family.
Nice. Big Italian influence in New Orleans. Our lead Paul is Italian. Yeah. So I got a lot of that as well. I don't know the restaurant though. I've never been there.
Yeah. Well, it became Oyster Bar. Well, I think it was something else, and then it became Oyster Bar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
an Oyster Bar is. I think it's still Oyster Bar. They used to I guess Sinatra and all the guys from the Rat Pack and Tony Bennett would go float through. Yeah. Because my great uncles, there was Big Tony, Big Joe, Little Tony, Little Joe, and then their sisters, Mary, and I can't remember the other one. Well, Frances was my great grandmother. That's what it was. It was on the great grandmother's side, all the Tortoricis. But they had a group called Double Escort, the Tonys and the Big Tony, Big Joe, and then the sisters. Nice. And they would just do a vocal harmony thing together. Yeah.
Did you spend time in New Orleans at all?
A little bit. Yeah. I went down there. When I was a kid, I remember meeting great-grandparents and great-aunts and uncles, but the old family home was lost in Katrina.
The place I lived was lost in Katrina. Yeah. It was my great-aunt's house where I used to live, and that was in New Orleans East though, but there was a lot of devastation.
Yeah, I think the house was in Metairie. But it's I still have relatives there. The Giordano side is still there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know some Giordanos?
Yeah, I do. Sal, he was the luthier, the main luthier, worked on my upright.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's probably relation there.
Yeah.
Chuck Giordano is my second cousin. He's an attorney down there. Okay. He was he's this tall. He was roommates with Shaquille O'Neal. Okay. I've seen pictures of them. He looks like a 12-year-old boy, standing next to him, but they were roommates. So I have a connection, and I went down after Katrina. I lived on the coast for 5 months doing relief work.
Okay.
But that was the only stint that I lived, and I wasn't even in New Orleans really. I ended up with our family in Gulfport, Biloxi, and then I lived in a church in Pascagoula, Mississippi. If you ever went through there. Yeah. It's a little town. It's great.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
New Orleans is a special place, and definitely for me, I always call it, that was kind of my second home, my musical college experience as well, for sure. Just being around so many great musicians, all kinds of styles. There was kind of the brass band revival happening there when I moved there initially, and just Mark Whitfield was around, guitarist, amazing guitar player. Just on and on. There's so many great things that were, big influence for me there.
When I moved from Los Angeles back to here and went through New Orleans, went through Austin and then New Orleans, and I remember it was right before, I forget what hurricane it was that was coming through, And I remember talking to a bunch of the just singers and artists, and going through
before
all those,
Katrina.
This was post Katrina.
Okay.
This was
the
back in
next
like
one.
2011.
Okay.
No, it would have been late 2012.
Okay.
I can't remember which one it was that was coming through at that point. Just another one.
There's so many at one point there.
Yeah, but just meeting, just like your average folk songwriter down there. Like it's a totally different experience as an artist to go and visit these other artists living in these different areas. Again, that's one of the reasons why I think there's an important element of collaboration and contribution to other people's projects. That is not only inspiring, but really important to help create these movements and changes in genre and stuff. I've always had a problem with genre. I don't know if you've ever felt that way.
Yeah, but absolutely.
It's like it's such a wrong way to look at what it is as an art.
Boxing it up. I mean, it's purely a commercial aspect impinged or forced onto music. Yeah, absolutely. Being from from New Orleans too, it's like it's so many cross-genre things happening, influences happening anyway. That's what essentially jazz became. It's like, but Mutemath definitely experienced that as far as trying to be pinpoint in a certain lane. No one really wants to be. I mean, maybe there are some people that are like, no, we're post-hardcore, whatever. I get confused. I don't even know what's what anymore. To be honest,
there's definitely certain genres that like it works for that, like anti-folk. Like if you're on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, you're anti-folk. That's exactly what you want. But again, even country music these days, it is open to most of the stuff that I do now. I guess would either be considered country or Americana, which is a label that I can't stand. But again, it's like it is what it is. It doesn't bother me to the extent that I'm not, it doesn't hinder what you do. I don't think, as long as I should say this. As long as it's not hindering what the artist is doing, I don't care what they call it. That I think is where it starts to become just too diplomatic and too structured and too business.
It's probably becoming a little bit more free or a little bit less, restraint. Like what's the word? Constraint on the artist, because now so many people listen to so many different types of music. It's just at your fingertips. So it's like it's just a little box to say, hey, okay, and they always ask for I feel like 20 of them. I was like, I don't know what to call this anymore. Like, where am I falling under these subcategories when you register something or whatever? And it's like, okay, here's 5 categories. And I think they're little SEO tags or something just to kind of point people in kind of the right direction, maybe,
That's where genres are helpful. But I mean, we only had the internet in the last however many years. So what were we doing before that? I think just as musicians, it's one of those sort of timeless crafts that I don't think AI will ever really touch what musicians do. Because it can only replicate anyway, and everything we've talked about is a great example of how it's just constantly changing and evolving, and you have to sort of roll with the industry has to in many ways roll with that. We're all going to continue to change and be different, so it's going to have to just try to keep up with that. But to your point, in order for people to find it, it's not just AM radio anymore or just FM radio or going to see whatever band is rolling through your town. It is at people's fingertips. So to make it relevant for whatever it is that someone happens to be looking for, I'm shocked, but I've given up on remembering. I've always been bad about names and stuff anyway, but I'm at the absolute worst, frankly. Like you were talking about, I can't remember who you were talking about earlier in this conversation. I just, maybe it's small children and memory loss, but legitimately, it's always been that way for me. But I think I have had an aversion to that. My dad is a painter and an artist. And so I grew up getting history lessons. Every time we go to a gallery or a museum, I'd learn all about the technique, and the artist behind it and whatever. And I love that element of it, but maybe that's where my jazz influences come from, is I love the idea of getting into the space and then that's the moment and you're out of it.
Yeah.
Improvisation is one of my favorite experiences. You know, it's that I think is what really the life of music is all about, is the creation of it, you know? And then it's this time.
And that moment.
Yeah, that moment
especially.
Yeah, I think, but anyway, I feel like I've gone off on a tangent.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, I mean,
enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, man.
We got to get together in here if you ever want to come by, man. Let's make some music together.
I'd love to.
Bring some pedals over.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to, man. Anytime, for sure.
Yeah, rock and roll. All right, man.
Cool.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, cut. And there you go, folks. Ambient music. It's not just elevator music. It's many things. This week's bonus episode is Buddy Miller's interview from the documentary that I did. And if you're a Buddy Miller fan, or if you don't know who Buddy Miller is, Robert Plant and Alison Krauss project, he helped orchestrate a lot of that alongside some other friends of mine, Scotty McEwen and guys like this. This is a whole world of musicians that some people don't even realize play such a major role in the music creation process. Anyway, it's a great little time capsule of an interview that I got to have with him, just like the Daryl Scott interview. I really think that you're going to enjoy it, and I think that you should definitely check it out. That is for Patreon and Substack subscribers only, but just free members. You don't have to be paying for that. Next week, we'll probably do another song episode, or Shane Alexander. I don't know. I haven't quite decided what we're doing next week just yet, but stay tuned. Shane Alexander is the guy that I wrote the EP with. He's a producer. He's great. So stay tuned. It'll either be the song or it'll be the Shane interview, whichever one I end up cutting together first, because I do want to get the documentary footage together for that episode as a bonus. At least do like one of those songs and maybe even preview one of the songs off the new EP. I don't know. Let's see how far we get. Thanks for watching. I will see you next week.